Hi everyone, welcome back to Plan V Works. This is Vanessa, and today we are going to create a fast and easy Christmas card that is flat but has the image of a dimension. And the reason we're doing this is so you won't have to use a special mailing stamp, which is a little bit more expensive, and your card can still lay flat and be sent through regular mail by using the stamps that you already have. But at the same time, if you look at this card, it has the idea of a dimension to it. So that's what we're going to focus on today. Let's start with our materials. First up, we're going to use this Hero Arts Stamp and Cut stamp set. It has the word joy as a corresponding die, but it also comes with all these little tidings, which is great. We're also going to use this Hero Arts cardstock, and I love how bold that red is. Very heavy duty cardstock as well. And my personal favorite, the Simon Says Stamp Stencil. Now this is very versatile. You can use this horizontally or vertically. You can use just the center. And there are many ways you can use this stamp. And I will teach you guys how to use this later on and show you how it works. And we're also going to use our Distress Oxide ink here in Aged Mahogany. This will create the image of dimension even if we're actually not putting more layers. We're also going to use our embossing powder and this very inexpensive pigment ink that I got through Amazon. It comes in a box of 12s or something, and it's very, very inexpensive. It comes to like $1 each. We're also going to use my Dollar Tree glitter glue here, and just to add a little bit more texture, but it's not very necessary for this project. So let's begin creating our card. And the first step you need to do is to figure out how you want your wreath to come out as an image on your card. And you can use this from a corner, from a side. And the reason we want to do that is so we can cover the rest of the bits we won't need. So for me, I want the flourish to end a certain way from the top and from the bottom here. And the rest that I won't use, I will cover with painter's tape. Now, you can also use washi tape for this, but I find that painter's tape is a lot wider, so it covers bigger areas and a lot more inexpensive. Now, if the painter's tape is a little bit too sticky, just run it through your fingers or a piece of cloth, and it will lose a little bit of stickiness. That way, it won't damage your cardstock because some cardstock might not be as heavy duty, and it might actually damage the cardstock a little bit. But like I said, all you need to do is just run it through your fingers or a piece of cloth and it will lose its stickiness. Now that you figure out how you want your stencil to look and you've covered up all the important bits or the non-important bits, the next thing you do is to secure it from the back. A lot of people forget to do this, and the problem is once you start moving it around, the stencil will not lock in place. And you will have a lot of excess images that's going to look blurred and not as solid as an image. Now, once you've done that, the next thing we do is we use our ink pad. This one is pigment ink. You can also use embossing ink, obviously, but like I said, I wanted to try this inexpensive pigment ink that I found through Amazon. You can use any other pigment ink that you have already. Any color would do as well, but just remember that you want to use the same color of the cardstock that you have, just so if you have uncovered bits with embossing powder, it will not show as much. Now, so far I like the red shade of this ink, and if you look closely, you can see that it leaves out a little bit of shadow there, like a watermark. And some cards that I've created have this effect on its own, a shadow or a watermark on it, and it looks very, very nice. However, for this card, I prefer to put more glitter and shine just because it's a holiday card. So I'm going to pour in my embossing powder right here. So I ran out of anti-static powder tool, and that is a very important tool when doing a lot of embossing. So luckily for me though, that it did not turn out as bad. While there were some excesses, it wasn't a whole lot. It was just enough for me to clean up, and that was the easy part. I just need a little bit of cleaning up on the edges, and I will use my brush here. This is a very inexpensive brush. This was from the Dollar Tree, and just brush away all of those little bits. Now, this should be done with caution, a lot of caution, because once that embossing powder is in there, the slightest bit of brush that touches it will take it away. So you want to be very careful when you do this. Now you can also heat set this, but the thing about that is once the embossing powder is set and there are a lot of excesses, then it will be harder to take all of them out using your craft knife and just scratching them all out. Now the next step would be to heat set this. However, I plan to heat set this just one time because I don't want my paper or my cardstock to warp. So what I'm going to do is stamp in my sentiment from the Hero Arts stamp and cut set. But again, very carefully, because like I said, once you touch any of the bits with embossing powder in it without being heat set, it will come off completely. So now I'm just using my acrylic block here, and then the same way I will just ink it up using the same pigment ink that I used earlier. I think it had very good results, and so I'm going to use it again. Now, obviously, you can use embossing powder here, embossing ink here as well, and different kinds or brands of pigment ink. But I wanted to use that brand in particular for this project, just to see how it's going to fare, and I think so far it's doing a good job. Now just making sure that I get a really good image here from my stamping, and I think it looks good. So we're just gonna grab our embossing powder once again, pour that in, and once again, I wish I had my anti-static powder tool just so I don't get a lot of excesses and I get a more solid and crisp image. But we deal with what we have, and a lot of people might not even have anti-static powder to begin with. So again, let's just clean that up. It's easy. It takes a little bit of time and a little bit of work, but in the end, it's all worth it to get that crisp and solid edges and clean image. Now you can do all of this again with the wreath that you have. Pour in a little bit more powder for areas that you want with a bit more coverage, and you can do that easily. And now that we have our stamped image completely covered with embossing powder, the next step would be my favorite, and that is to heat set it. Now, I always say this in my videos that this is my favorite part. Once all of that powder is heat set and it becomes this beautiful shiny image, it just never fails to amaze me. Now from this, we are going to have a very beautiful and shiny image, but again, it's still very flat because the idea is to create the dimension without creating too many layers on top of the card, so we can use our regular stamps. So to do that, we are going to use our Distress Oxide Aged Mahogany ink here. And what it will do is create shadows from the corners. That way, it will appear that our image is coming from the back, heading to the front. It gives the eye that idea of a dimension, even if the card is very flat. You will see from my finished product that it looks like there's a shadow from behind, and that creates that fake dimension that the image is coming out of. And that is just one of the few ways that you can do and not create so many layers when sending out these cards, because I have seen a lot of cards with like a ton of layer in front, and I'm not sure how you're going to run that through the mail without damaging it, honestly. So we are going to create a fake dimension effect on this card as well, and I already love how it looks. But once again, we still want to give that card a special touch, and by doing that, we are just going to add a little bit more detail to it. This final detail is not necessary and you can end here. However, because like I said, this card is flat, I wanted to give it a little bit more texture. That way, when the recipient gets it, there's a little bit more something to it than just a flat greeting card. Now, what I'm doing here is just adding my glitter glue and putting a little bit of it on top of the leaves here. And by doing that, the leaves won't be as smooth as it would be. So it looks like the leaves are actually has a texture. But in fact, it's just glitter. And this will create that fake dimension or layer without actually creating it. And I love how this actually looks because, well, the glitter is shiny on its own, but at the same time, it blends in so well with our gold embossing image here. And that is how you find ways to create texture or a dimension without adding too many layers on your card. Just use shadows, use inks, use different kinds of effect. In fact, you can use um, glitter paper or shiny paper for this if you have the correct dyes. But since I don't, then I was just using an embossing powder and embossing ink because that's what I have. And you can use many, many ways, and you don't need all of these tools to create your own handmade cards. I just hope that you got inspired to create and make personalized cards for your loved ones during the holidays. So if you feel that you had fun watching this video and got a little bit of inspiration, please consider liking and subscribing to Plan V Works for more affordable crafting, resourceful hacks, and easy techniques. We'll see you guys next time and enjoy the holidays.